Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Mann, and I'm just here to introduce this panel and then get out of the way. This is the second of our Partners in Conversation series, a new format for the MCN conference. And in a moment, you guys are going to get to hear from Erick Kendrick from Piction and Diana Folsom from the Gilcrease Museum. And so I'll hand things over to them right now, and thank you very much for coming.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We've had a couple wonderful days in New Orleans, eh? Good to see you all. Had some great food. Lunch was great, too. I really enjoyed it. And I think the sound's okay, right? That's enough of a sound check? Great. I am here today to talk about a software utility that we are just starting to use. We've just been developing with partial funding from the IMLS. We're calling it the Distance Cataloging Interface. Not very catchy, it's the programmers who named it, and we're still kind of playing with the name a little bit, but it's proving already to be very, very useful. And then just to back up, I'm Diana Folsom. I'm with the Gilcrease Museum, also known as the Thomas Gilcrease Institute of American History and Art. So that gives you an idea of the range of materials we have. We represent a huge amount of material, 450,000 items or so in our collection. We have art, we have archival material, archaeological material, and library materials, rare books, not so rare books, medium rare books, all kinds of good content, ranging from ancient to modern materials. But we're located in a not so easy to find or not so often visited area, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we have a challenge. We have an incredible, important collection that not a lot of people know about and not too many people visit, but we would like to make it available to all. And so imaging and cataloging the entire collection has become a goal. And that's why I was brought there to Oklahoma to work on that task. And we've just launched our first version of an online collection site with about 20,000 items, which give you a general representation of the range of things that we have. As I said, we're a small museum. We have about 3,500 ancient ceramic vessels of a very, very important collection of ancient southeastern Native American artifacts, ceramic vessels in particular, that we were awarded an IMLS grant to catalog. They're amazing objects. They're actually a part of my heritage as well. So it was an amazing discovery to find these materials in our collection. But the challenge is, again, large collection, small museum. We need about 22 experts to catalog, review, make good our records of just our archaeological and anthropological collection alone. And currently we have 1.5 curators. So, so we can't quite do it all with the people that we have. So this tool, inspired by the Steve in Action project that IMLS funded, and a software utility developed by the IMA Labs, seemed to me like a good way to help us harness expertise of people around the country to realize our vision, realize our dream of cataloging everything. So we, in this particular project that we're focusing on, it's called the Laemmle Collection. We are working with 4 native artists from 3 different tribes, the Caddo tribe, the Quapaw, and the Osage tribes, to add useful artistic search terms for these items, which are often very different from the archaeological types that the experts or the scholars give to these items. And the native artists are connecting, kind of finding again the old ways of making these artworks by visiting the collections, because these ways were lost, these techniques were lost on the Trail of Tears. And there's a resurgence of interest, certainly in Oklahoma and probably around the country, to relearn the old ways and recreate the old ways. So there's quite a bit of study being done of our collections. So we want to help that effort. And then we also want to work with the experts to get the data right. We found that these archaeologists in Arkansas have been studying this particular collection for 40 years already Yeah, 40 years with terrible black and white images. I mean, I can hardly see the items, and I'm wondering if they're going to discover completely different iconography with good images. They might. So we want to harness that expertise. So we created this, really pretty simple utility to enable them to view what we've done, to make comments, additions to what we've done, and also to enable the artists to tag the collection, add search terms that are of value, and also if the archaeologists want to add their particular kinds of terms as well, they can do that. It's separate from the TMS database where we do our main cataloging of the collection. It's also separate from the Piction database. But it's obviously connected. I'm trying to make it pretty robust, and I find that the more we use it, the more robust I want it to be, so that they can do some pretty in-depth cataloging from a distance when we identify the appropriate experts. So we can already track and manage their work, and they can do that themselves, and which is needed because each artist is assigned about 850 items already to work with, and that's a lot of items to manage. So we're developing a fairly comprehensive toolkit. So this is Piction powered. It's in the Piction is the foundation, but we have a Drupal front end, a Drupal portal. And when these tags and comments are reviewed and approved, the comments are then automatically put back into TMS so that those can be used to enrich the records, either make corrections now or used to enrich them later. And then the native artist tags are also added back into the TMS database. We also have a way to indicate who the expert was so we can track that particular viewpoint. We know who gave the tags, who did the commenting. And then the approved artist tags will also go in the online record with a label, native artist tags, so you know that perspective as well. So this is what it looks like. It's pretty standard. You see the list of items that you have available to work on. A few of the fields are available in kind of list form. You can see I haven't done any tagging yet or any work, so I have 875 pending and none completed. But if some were completed, you would see the little circle with the color chart sort of show you where you stand in your workload. And then we've just yesterday, I think, added this search and kind of filtering utility because we're finding that the archaeologists in particular, as they're working through this, they need to go back and review what they did earlier, maybe change something as they're working forward. So they need to work back and forth. It's not just work on one item, move to the next, work on one item, and they're finished. But they're really doing a comprehensive study and annotation back and forth. And this is what a full record looks like, pretty standard, just an open box for the tagging, an open box for the commenting. I think they're unlimited fields. They can add as much as they want, and we're finding that the archaeologists are adding a lot of content already. And you can see below the different views of the object. And below the fold, so to speak, is we've put the data that we've already entered. I didn't want it to be immediately visible when the tagger or the reviewer is looking at the item so that they have a fresh perspective. I think we found in the Stephen Action project that when someone was adding tags, if they could see the metadata that was already added, that they tended to just repeat the same information. So hoping that they'll be thinking further and add terms that will be useful to themselves. And here's another example just because I think it's beautiful. Beautiful item. And then here are some of the comments that we are already getting from the archaeologists. This is really our first batch. So they're both kind of correcting, modifying what we've done, and they're also adding new information. They're adding site information, which we were unable to figure out ourselves, at least within the terms of this grant. But over the past 40 years of work, they've been able to add much deeper, richer information that they're happy to add for us, which is great. We're thinking that maybe we should add little thumbnails on the side so that whoever's reviewing and approving this information may want to kind of reference the object itself. So this is our first time using it, so we're figuring out what we need. The other thing we're finding is that the archaeologists are now revising their philosophies for the cataloging. So the typing is changing, and Dr. Early, who's working on this, commenting, is already taking a different approach than she trained us in 2 years ago when we started the project. So we're getting the old cataloging philosophy and the new cataloging philosophy at once. And again, here's a record online, and where the tags currently show, we will add another area that'll say Native Artist Tags, and that's where the Native Artist Tags will go. Now, I must say that these objects are culturally sensitive objects, so far our agreements with the tribe are that these will be in a password-protected area. We're hoping that we'll be able to share at least some of these vessels more freely online, but that agreement has not yet been reached, so... but it will be available on an approved basis. And so here's Erick to talk about the back end.
Thanks, Diana. You got to talk about all the really cool, sexy stuff. So I'm going to be talking about the technical stuff of how this sort of hangs together. So if you take a look on the left over there, that's really representing the Gilcrease technical architecture internally. So they have obviously the the TMS system, and Piction's there connecting directly to TMS. We have an integration with TMS, and they have their SAN, which is called B in that diagram. So the idea is that internally the Gilcrease staff can put together sets of objects within Piction, group them together, and then be able to then publish that out to the Piction DMZ server, which is on the right-hand side in the middle there. So we have a DMZ instance because in a lot of institutions or any organization, they have some fairly strict security policies where they don't allow incoming queries through a firewall. So basically, that's why we have a DMZ instance that's out into the internet there. And our system internally automates the publishing and replication of data one way from internal to the DMZ site. All of that information gets published is obviously media that we create and derive from the objects. And all of the images that you saw that Diana showed you on the DCI interface, that's all being published out from Piction. Okay, so you saw the list there, you saw a large web version, and you saw thumbnails. So all of that stuff is being published from Piction, and obviously all of the data and the relationships around that are also being published. So the really cool thing that we've done on the DMZ side is we have an integration with Drupal, and then part of that is the Drupal web content management system is that the development partners, Urban Insight, they develop the front end, the form of the DCI, and basically, captures the data, and all of that data is then managed in the Piction DMZ instance. Okay, so we're not only just publishing it, but we're also storing data in the Piction DMZ instance. And then once that's all, put together, we then have, within security guidelines, we then have a method of taking the captured data from the web and then transporting that back into the internal instance, in which our internal instance then updates TMS. Okay, so that's kind of how that all hangs together. The other thing is that we're also integrating with the Amazon S3 for storage. So that way, on the Drupal side, that's what they decided to use. So basically all the media that we generate gets published out to Amazon as well. And all of that gets done automatically from it. So that's kind of the architecture. Looks simple. It's meant to be simple, but there's a lot of work in the integration pieces that's gone through. One cool thing about this project is that all of the code here is all open source and it's all up on GitHub. So you can take this if you have the same kind of software technology stack, be able to take this and then be able to tailor it to your specific needs from that. I know in Australia, the National Museum of Australia is already looking at that particular DCI interface because they have the same challenges where they have indigenous people that's out, in the outback, and they need to be able to kind of comment or capture knowledge about certain objects that those people only know about. So they're looking at this particular thing, so they can just download that as part of Drupal, and they've obviously got Piction as well as part of their stack, but they've got a different collection management system, so that's the difference. So that's my bit. So is there any questions for Diana and I? Yes?
You had your 875 pending and the completed. Do you have a clear definition of what is complete?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? We haven't gotten that far yet, actually. I think it's if it's been cataloged at all, but I need to look at that because it probably should be if it's approved, but it's a good question. Yeah, thank you.
How many people are approving the data? Is it just you?
Well, so far, yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. Yes. So let's see. The first question was asking what is the definition of when an item has been approved? And I'm not sure that we've clearly defined that yet. I think that it's when the item has been tagged or commented upon and approved and accepted. And then your question was how many people are approving. And with so many items, it would be wonderful if there was more than one approver. And theoretically, the software would allow more than one, but we haven't tried that yet. So far, it's just been me. So, but ideally, it would be a curator once we have a curator in that role. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Rob.
Is there any idea to expose the comments and tags separately from Piction or TMS as annotations in their own right, or is it only just part of the workflow to get the data into the system, or the data?
I think that's a wonderful question. So the question was, is there any plan to expose the annotations and tags in another way besides? Were you saying besides online and besides in TMS or?
Yeah, besides as a workflow component.
A workflow component.
System.
Yes.
They have their own intellectual capacity, their own intellectual value by themselves.
They sure do. And certainly cultural representatives from the tribes are going to be very interested in this information, particularly the site information. So some information is sensitive, like the site information, and in order to be exposed, it would have to be moved into probably a more private or carefully guarded field. I think that it would be fantastic to expose it, but it would need review and editing. And again, I think it's purely a matter of human capacity to do that step. But I think it's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, and from a technology perspective, I mean, they've obviously got the capacity to just, take any bit of data. I'm saying it right, to any bit of data that they have, and then expose it in a certain way. Based on security and privileges in that sense. Yeah.
Have you guys come across any ideas or reasons not to, like in tagging, especially with open vocabularies, like having some tags that are potentially publicly viewable and some that are not, but still cataloged? So, like for instance, you could search on tags, but they wouldn't show up on the record. But you know what I mean? I sort of call these synonyms when I do the It might help with in my thinking, it helps with searchability and tracking things that might be embarrassing, but also might help with convincing those who don't want things to be seen if they can control what parts of it are seen and what parts aren't. Although I'm very interested in what the resistance is to showing the images from the indigenous people.
Okay, so there's a couple questions there. All right. So the first one is there any idea of keeping some tags private? I like the idea of exposing all of them, but I hadn't thought of the reasons that you suggested, which are good ones, perhaps, for not exposing all of the tags. So that's something to think about for the future. I hadn't thought about those additional reasons. Let's see. was the other question? A question about, was the next one still about tagging, or did I cover the tagging questions?
covered it, yeah.
Okay, great. And then the question about is that these are funerary objects, and they're ceremonial, and they were found in burial sites. So those are the reasons, because they're sacred objects.
So, yep.
Purely mechanical question. Where are you storing the tag within TMS?
In the attributes field. Oh, and the question was, where are you storing the tags in TMS? Okay. Yes.
So this adds on to what Chad asked, when it's going into the attributes, with their tags, is it building your own custom in-house vocabulary, or is it connected straight to the AAT?
So in our norm, okay, yes. Oh gosh, I'm bad about that. So the question is, how are we entering the tags into TMS? Are we connecting some to the AT or internal vocabularies? And in general, we're doing both with our tags. In this particular project, it was more than we could handle to connect the tags to the AAT. Working with the Native artists in particular, we're finding that we think this is a very simple process, but this is not a simple process to them. We are going out actually to their homes and training them. After having initial meetings and showing them how to use the software, we find that we're needing to be very personal and very hands-on about showing them how to use it. So it would need to be an activity that would be done separately on our end. And again, for us, it's a matter of not really having the personnel to do that additional kind of step. But that would be something in the future, because currently we use both, AAT for some tags and our own vocabularies. We're also working with the artists and the archaeologists right now to develop a more standardized vocabulary for the artists to use. The artists it's harder for them. So we're really just getting started with them, and it's a good experiment, and I think it's going to work well. But we're just entering that more careful stage. So.
Any last questions? Yes.
So I can't quite hear you, but see, did you say, will we roll it out to all of our collection?
What's your vision for the future?
Oh, vision for the future? Well, I have to say, even though it is, it requires a lot of training for the artists, we have, issues to work out about, the tagging and such. It's proving to be so useful that I would like to use it for the entire collection. And now this project doesn't end for another year. So I know we won't roll it out any further earlier than that time, but that is my idea. I'm finding it so useful. I really need it to be a very robust utility, and we have so much to catalog. We would like to use it for everything. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you for the good questions, and please continue to send more suggestions and questions my way, because we're finding it more useful than expected, and your suggestions are really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.